Well, talking you decide 2020 ballot recounts are wrapping up in Georgia for the presidential race. The president's legal team still filing lawsuits across the country about voter fraud, hoping to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And joining us live now, Clemson Constitutional Law professor Kevin Vancey. Thank you for joining us tonight, Kevin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, the Georgia Secretary of State has said that Senator Lindsey Graham implied he should try to discard some ballots. Now, the senator denied that. Then he said he actually called Arizona and also Nevada's Secretary of State, which they deny that. And a lot of people are now asking about an ethics investigation. Can you explain why witness signatures on ballots is such a big concern here?
Well, I think Senator Graham's concern is that when you have absentee ballots that have signatures on the envelopes, that he's concerned that the signatures on the envelopes don't actually match some of the voter signatures that are on file with the state. But then the Georgia Secretary of State's concern is that if we're going to go back and check those envelopes again to see if they match, if some of them turn out not to match, there's no way to only discard the mismatched votes rather than a bunch of votes that were legally cast. And so I think that's his concern.
And Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney, promised a number of lawsuits to provide the president with evidence of this voter fraud. How long can the president's legal team continue to file lawsuits, and would they be able to do that even after Joe Biden's inauguration?
I suppose they could continue to file lawsuits for some time, so long as they don't cross the line into being frivolous. But once the Electoral College votes, and certainly once Congress meets on January 6th to certify the election, there's no chance that a court would dare to overturn the certification of Congress.
And right now, President-elect Biden is in the process of building his senior staff, the transition team, moving forward. At what point does the administration legally have to provide support to the incoming administration? A lot of people are saying, this is dangerous for our country, that the president-elect is not getting some vital information he needs to make this transition smooth and be able to go to work, January 20th.
Right. So Congress has set aside funds for the use of the president-elect after a presidential election during a transition. And those funds are released once the administrator of the General Services Administration, who's a Trump appointee, ascertains that there's been a new president who's been elected. And so far that hasn't happened. But again, if we start getting into some of those key dates of when the Electoral College votes, certainly by January 6th, then I would be very surprised if a court doesn't get involved to force the administration's hand to release those funds.
And we just heard from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and then here locally, Governor Henry McMaster talking about COVID-19. Does the federal government have the authority to actually implement that national mask mandate, as we've heard President-elect Joe Biden suggest?
Well, the Biden campaign did make some noises about a national mask mandate. As far as I know, his concrete proposals have been first requiring people going into federal buildings to wear masks, which is certainly within his authority to do, and also advising that states adopt their own mask mandates, which again is within his authority to do. But if we were to stop and consider whether or not there would be authority to have a national mask mandate, I wouldn't categorically deny it, because there are some unwritten emergency powers that are vested in the executive, but there will certainly be legal challenges.
And this, I think, is a debate that can go on for days. We'll probably talk about this for an entire hour, but it's the popular vote versus the Electoral College. Some people have said the Electoral College has surpassed its intended purpose. Many people are calling for it to be taken away and go by the popular vote. I mean, from what you've read about, what you've researched, you're pretty knowledgeable in this. What is your thought process on that? Should the Electoral College stay in place? Should it be revamped? What do you say to folks out there questioning that today?
Well, I would point to a few, at least little advantages that I think the Electoral College gives us. First, in a situation where there might be potential for voter fraud, I think it isolates that danger to only certain states rather than having one big national election. And then secondly, and probably more importantly, I think it helps preserve the two-party system. I mean, some of your viewers might think that's a bad thing, but I would say a two-party system helps facilitate coalition building before elections, and it might also help decrease the risk of extremism in our politics. And so that's what I would caution people before they throw out a system that served us fairly well for a pretty long time.
I think that debate's going to go on. I don't think it's going to stop here in 2020, but we do appreciate you joining us. Like I said, I think we're going to have you back before this is all said and done, because I don't think this is going to go away in the next week or two. So those key dates are very important.
Right. Thank you for having me.